I've almost had fist fights in those situations where I've told the guy to get the girl out and he doesn't want to because he's been drinking. Hi, welcome back to the channel. So we haven't done one of these for a while and I've taken a slightly different format. It's a kind of a Q&A, but it's based on questions that get repeatedly asked in the comments section. They vary from a wide range from clean shaven to relations on board and everything in between. So let's get started. Question number one, should the captain be clean shaven? Or for that matter, should the crew be clean shaven? I've worked on vessels where you had to be clean shaven, you had to shave every day. That was the norm for a long time. Now, as beards became more popular, then it kind of started to change a little. I was on one yacht where when the owner wasn't on board, the captain let us not shave. So everybody was growing beards. As soon as the owner was coming back on board, everybody has to shave. In more recent times, one of the boats I worked on, owner was not bothered. You had to have, you had to shave it and make it tidy and keep it in good condition. You couldn't just have sort of a crazy, Joseph Islam beard. Ultimately, it's down to the owner. I don't know why the owner would care if his crew are clean shaven or not, but like I said, as long as they look neat, because that's generally the standard is we all have to look neat in our uniform. All right, the next thing that comes up constantly in the comments is about, not constantly, it comes up a lot in the comments, is the terminology used around super yachts. Some people have even accused me of not knowing what I'm talking about because I didn't say mega yacht when I was referring to a certain vessel. Well, it might shock you to know, but there is no official terminology when it comes to this. It's a bit like a Ferrari being a supercar. People call it a supercar. Why is it a supercar? Because it's very fast and it's very luxurious and it's very expensive, and that generally means that it's a supercar, right? There's no like terminology anywhere in where it will say this is classed as a sports car or a supercar. Sports car maybe, family car, sports car, they're kind of more normal terminology, but even then, it's not official, right? It's the same with super yachts. The technical term is large motor vessel, and in the MCA regulations, which most countries go by, they might have their own version, but they've basically taken it from the MCA. A large motor vessel or large motor yacht, shall I say, is a yacht of 24 meters in length or longer. Now, the Monaco Yacht Show generally refers to a super yacht as anything over 35 meters. Technically, the term is large motor yacht, and super yacht and mega yacht, they're just sort of used unofficially. The only kind of vessel I would call a mega yacht would be something like Eclipse or Dilbar or something, the ones that are absolutely massive, because when you see them next to a regular super yacht, they dwarf them. So that's the only real time that I might use that terminology, but generally they're all super yachts. In a recent video, we talked about the research vessel Rev Ocean, which is currently at Ameld getting refitted or getting final fitting of the super yacht section of the yacht. Basically, that is a research vessel / yacht, right? So it's not going to be registered as a super yacht, it's going to be registered as a research vessel. It's going to do a lot of deep ocean research, it's going to have a lot of research on board. The vessel is almost 200 meters, which is like 650 feet. It's a gargantuan thing. What I was saying is that the crew of 50 for that vessel was quite low, because on a vessel, I've worked on yachts that were, in comparison to 200 meters, much smaller than that, and we had larger crews than that. I've worked on yachts where we've had 70 crew. So a 200 meter vessel to only have 50 crew, I said was quite low. One of the comments said that because it's a research vessel instead of a luxury yacht, you don't need to have the same crew / passenger ratio, since the crew isn't spending all day serving cocktails to passengers and tendering to their every whims. Well, that's very specific, and also the majority of the crew on a vessel is not the people serving people on board. The majority of the crew are actually sailing that vessel. You've got engineers, you're going to have You're going to have three rotational third engineers. You're going to have a second engineer, chief engineer, motormen. You're going to have people in the laundry. You're going to have 3 third officers doing navigational rotation on the bridge. You're going to have a chief officer. You're going to have a captain. You're going to have then you're going to go into the interior. You're going to have interior staff, stewardesses. You're going to have housekeeping. For cleaning and all that kind of stuff, and all of that back end that you have there. On a vessel of that size, it's going to have lots of boats in the water, which require people to drive them. It's going to have all kinds of equipment. They've got to launch that stuff. They've got to clean that vessel. You're going to have an awful lot of deckhands. They've got to be on shifts because the vessel's going to be operating 24 hours a day. So you can't say, oh well, we just need like 6 deckhands, because they've got to sleep as well. So you've got to have enough on board to have some people sleeping, some people working the night shift, some people working the day shift. You need a lot of crew. You need a big crew. You ask any captain of any super yacht out there, do you have enough crew? Most likely it's going to say no, I could do with a few more. If you ever connect to public Wi-Fi, such as at airports, hotels or coffee shops, you should be using NordVPN to protect your device. Public Wi-Fi is a playground for hackers who connect and scan information for weaknesses to exploit to steal your data. And if you're traveling and hunting for a bargain, use NordVPN to switch to another country and save yourself hundreds on a hotel room. And don't be the product. If you think your free VPN is the same, you're wrong. A free VPN will track your activity and sell that data to ad companies. Anyone offering anything for free, and you should be asking, what's the business model? And let's put it this way, if you're not paying, you're not the customer, you're the product. NordVPN does not log, and this has been verified through independent audits. Go to NordVPN/eSysman to get the 2-year plan with a huge discount plus 4 months extra. It's risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Now, in a recent video, we showed some footage of the brand new yacht for Graham Hart motor yacht Ulysses, and I showed some outstanding footage. I'll put it on screen again. And I showed the vessel, and I said that the vessel was heading back to the yard for some warranty work, and the vessel's only less than a year old. A lot of comments saying, why does it need to go back to the yard already? It's brand new. Well, the thing is, sometimes when you buy a new car, you have problems. You have recalls, right? The Cybertruck's had 8 recalls, I think, already, and that's because it's a new car, right? It's not had a lot. They've not made many of them, so they find lots of problems after they've already put them out and sold them. Well, a superyacht is even more bespoke. I mean, it's super bespoke. It's very complex, more so than a car. And like I said, it's a one of one. If you go to a shipyard with your billions of dollars and you say, I want to build this yacht, I want to have, I'll give you an example actually. I worked on a yacht and we had a round elevator, completely round elevator, all glass. It was bonkers. And they must have gone in there and said, we want this round elevator. And they've gone, yeah, we can do that, no problem. They have no idea how they're going to do it at the time, but they do it anyway. The problem with that round elevator that was on that yacht that I used to work on is it was always broken, because they had to design it from scratch, and it was all untested, right? So we ended up with this elevator that was always in some sort of having some sort of problems, and also it's on a yacht that's moving as well. So we were always working on this elevator to try and get it fixed. Some of the footage of Ulysses, people were commenting, quite a few comments actually, saying that the teak on the deck was ruined already, and that's probably why it was going back into the yard. Well, the teak was just wet. There was a lot of people were saying around the doors you could see where it was damaged, but that was just an area that wasn't wet. So teak, when teak gets wet, it goes very dark, and it's just rainwater. So there was nothing wrong with that teak at all. But yeah, any super bespoke thing, you're going to have problems with it, and it needs to go back in for that first period. After you've been out in that first period, they find all the problems. Because it's under warranty, the engineers can't fix it. They can do what they need to do to keep it running, but they can't get into it and start dismantling things because it's all under warranty. So at the end of that season, usually the owner goes on it for a few months, At the end of that season, go back to the shipyard and they fix all those warranties items. In a lot of our videos, almost every video we put out, the news videos I'm talking about now, we show footage from AIS. What we say on the AIS, and we go onto this map and we show you the vessel and all of the data. And we get a lot of questions about which application we're using, because we don't generally give out the name of the application. And that's because we don't really want to give them free advertising, because we're not really very happy with the application in general. I mean, it's the best application out there. It has the best maps and the best, visual aids that we can show you, but we're not really particularly happy with the way they run things there. So the one that we use is called Marine Traffic. And the reason why we don't like it is because they charge an awful lot of money for the system, right? I know what you're thinking. I use it for free. I don't pay any money to it, right? And that's true. You can use it on terrestrial AIS, which means if the yacht that you're tracking is near land, then all of the land-based or the AIS receivers that are on the ground that pick up that yacht or vessel, you can see that for free. But once the vessel goes out to sea and it uses satellite AIS, that information you can only get that information if you pay. And so obviously we need to pay to use it, and we're tracking all of these yachts, right? Now in 2022, when we started to track all the Russian yachts, most of them were turning it off. But what we found out is some of the yachts were contacting Marine Traffic and saying we don't want our information out there, and they were just switching off the feed. So we couldn't track that vessel. Now they were legally compliant, they were sailing around broadcasting their AIS on VHF like normal, but we weren't able to see it. But Marine Traffic weren't telling us. There was nothing on the screen to say this vessel has been switched off by us, right? So when we found this out, we had to, every time a yacht appears to go dark, we had to go to Marine Traffic and say, did you switch this off, or have they switched off their AIS? And then they would come back to us sometimes days later and say, no, that wasn't us, that's just them switching it off. And this was not a great system, right? And also we were paying almost €1,000 a month at the time for that system. €1,000 a month, and they were switching off data that we needed to track vessels without telling us. So they were charging us for a service that wasn't brilliant, right? But in the end, we got access to another system which has a policy that they never switch off any feeds regardless. And now, even though the Marine Traffic system has better maps, so we continue to use it, if we need to verify if a yacht switched off its AIS or not, then we just go to the other system, we look, we see if it's on there, and if it's still tracking and it's not on it on Marine Traffic, we know that Marine Traffic has switched it off. And if it's off on both of them, then we know that the ship has switched off the AIS. So we're able to verify it ourselves now without having to go to them. I'll give you an example. This is Motor Yacht Symphony, owned by one of the richest men in the world, Bernard Arnault. This vessel is never visible on Marine Traffic. Even if you search for it, it doesn't come up. Search for it by its IMO number, it doesn't exist on Marine Traffic. Even if I go to the location where I know that vessel is, it doesn't show on Marine Traffic. But if we switch to our alternative AIS system, and you can see it broadcasting right now in Cartagena in Spain. Now, another thing that comes up is alcohol on board yachts, especially after the incident on Motor Yacht Loon. Should they be serving alcohol on board? Should it be a dry ship? Now, even if there is alcohol served on board, officer of the watch and engineering officer of the watch can't drink. I think it's 6 hours before they go on shift. So they can only have a couple of drinks. When they finish their shift, they can have a few drinks, and they can't have any before they go on shift. It might be 8 hours, 6 or 8 hours before they go on shift. I'm not quite sure as I film this. I've worked on dry vessels. I've worked on vessels that serve beer or alcohol, or I've worked on vessels where they don't serve it, but they allow them to drink. And I've worked on a vessel that used to be serving alcohol for dinner, like a bottle of wine on each table, a big yacht it was, and then a few cans of beer in the fridge in the evening, and then it got stopped. So I've worked on every sort of iteration of a vessel that could be dry or drinking or whatever. And in my opinion, when the vessel that I worked on where they used to serve alcohol and then they stopped it, it had a really bad effect on the crew morale. The ship was kind of deserted in the evenings, where there used to be people sitting in the mess or sitting in the crew area, you know, sort of hanging out and having a couple of drinks and having a chat and stuff like that. It went from that to, you know, tumbleweeds. The reason why it happened is because the owner complained to the captain that one of the people smelled of alcohol. He didn't like it, and the captain completely overreacted, which happens a lot on yachts, and he banned everybody from drinking. Now, and the funny thing about it is the person that the owner complained about wasn't even a member of the crew. He was one of the guy's staff. He was a fitness instructor. He'd had a few drinks the night before, and he smelled of alcohol. So as a result, everybody on board suffered from this decision. So it was not a good decision in my opinion. But, you know, you do get situations though where people drink too much, and that has its own problems, right? So it's a tricky one. I don't drink myself, so it didn't affect me at all. But it's a tricky one, and it did have a negative effect on the crew. So it's hard. I would say that the circumstances you'd have to go by the circumstances on board, whether it should be allowed or not. But I personally think as long as people are not abusing it, then it should be okay. Now, interestingly, when they did ban the drinking on board, we noticed that the chefs all of a sudden were making a lot of things in the galley where they needed glasses of wine and stuff like that. So it had to be signed out from the interior staff. So yeah, you can imagine what they were making there. Something else that comes up a lot is about crew relations on yachts. You know, does it happen? How does that work? Well, of course, they're all adults, so of course there are relations happening on board. It's inevitable. When you work in that confined space, you don't go home for many months. On some yachts, the stewardesses and the deckhands are there for 5 months at a time, and then they only go home for a month. So of course, lots of young, usually attractive people on board. So yeah, of course it happens. It just depends on the yacht. Again, like some yachts, they recruit couples, but usually the smaller ones where they need multitasking couples. So they might say captain and purser or chief stewardess wanted, you know, couple. And it's because they want them, because they haven't got the space to give them 2 separate cabins. On the bigger yachts, that's not so much a thing. One of the yachts I used to work on, my opposite was female, and it was a problem the whole time. And at the time of recruitment, I picked this person because I was put in charge of recruitment of that position. And I said, she's the most qualified, but there's going to be a problem with accommodation. And they said, well, let's just hire her anyway. And it was a massive problem because every time she went on board, they had to ask a girl, would you share with a guy? And so I'm not doing that, and it was a massive problem. So this is part of the reason why they don't have couples on board, because it just creates an issue with accommodation. Also, there are lots of other issues as well. You know, if you're sharing a cabin, which most people do, if you're sharing a cabin with a guy and he wants to bring his girl in the evening to not sleep, if you know what I mean, and you're trying to sleep, the last thing you want to hear is someone else going at it, right? So that is not a great situation at all. I've been in that situation. I've almost had fist fights in those situations where I've told the guy to get the girl out and he doesn't want to because he's been drinking. So that, you can see how those two things tie into each other. But yeah, it can be an absolute nightmare in the wrong situation like that. So there are many reasons why it's not good. Another situation I've been in on board was an all-male crew. So I worked on a yacht where there was only one female on board, the purser. It was actually really refreshing because there was none of the drama that comes, you know, you watch Below Decks, you see the women catfighting and stuff like that.
I hate you, Gary.
And now it's our problem. He's a f***ing clown.
Just take it easy on the booze.
The men as well, actually, on there. But I think it creates more drama when you have that mix. One of the hardest things about working on yachts is sharing a cabin and then having that drama of the guy wants to bring the girl in, and then and I was quite cool about it. I was like, look, if you want to go in there and I will go out in the evening and you can take your girl in, and sometimes you just want to watch a movie together, whatever. I said I will go out and all that, but you cannot bring him in when I'm sleeping and be up to no good, you know.
There is to be
Sorry.
no
anyone in bunks underneath me.
Inevitably it happens, and then you have to have that whole thing. So yeah, it can be a real problem. So but yeah, it happens, and I'm sure that will always continue as long as yachts are having sharing cabins. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions that come from this. Hopefully I've answered them all, but I'm sure there'll be more questions. Let me know what you think anyway. Ask your questions below and we'll get into it in the comments. Be sure to like this video, very important for the algorithm. Share it with others and hit the like button and all that jazz as well. All right guys, bye-bye.